Hey everybody, in this video I wanted to cover Marvel Rivals and make a tier list for all the characters for Ranked tomorrow. Now I know it's very early, but if you wanted to head into Ranked and you wanted to know from a more high elo perspective what the characters are looking like in terms of power balance, I wanted to make this video for you. And just a preface to people who don't know me, I've been high rated in a lot of games, top 1000 in Valorant, top 100 in Deadlock. I've also gotten GM2 in Overwatch. And among other things, I'm not trying to flex. I just want to let people know, like, in general, I feel like I have a pretty good base of knowledge for competitive games, especially FPS games. So anyway, let's jump right into the tier list. And we're going to start off with Adam Warlock. Adam Warlock is either going to be A+ or S tier. I'm not quite sure. He does a lot of damage. He's kind of like Zenyatta in that front, but he also has very high burst healing. The only downsides to him are he's very cooldown dependent, and if you mess up your cooldowns, then he will lose a lot of value because his cooldowns are very long, and if you can't aim very well, he's going to struggle because he has no movement. You really have to win your 1v1s and use your cooldowns effectively. So I think overall for the average player, he's going to be A tier. Very rewarding but difficult, but I think he might be very meta in the pro scene just because his damage and healing output is so high, and people will be able to make up for his weaknesses by having a main healer with more consistent healing and peel for him. So I'm going to put him in the S tier. I think overall, if he's played well, he can be really strong. Black Panther, I think I'm going to put him in A tier. A tier is mainly for characters that are situational, but they're very strong, and he's exactly fits the bill. He has a ton of mobility, a lot of dive potential, a lot of damage, high mobility. The only things he really doesn't have, he's not like extremely tanky, nor does he have crowd control, but if you need a dive character, he's extremely strong, and a lot of Black Panthers will be like climbing walls and jump on you from the roof and surprise you. He can do a ridiculous amount of stuff. Obviously A tier. If you get really good at him, he is going to be a top meta pick in my opinion for you, especially for ranked. Doctor Strange, I'm going to put him in front of Black Panther. Doctor Strange to me is kind of like a better Reinhardt. His ultimate is better in my opinion, and he provides a lot of value, and he's consistent but not going to take over the game in my opinion like some other tanks. I'll get into that later, but I think he's just an all-around great hero, just always consistent and provides a lot of value. And in the same vein, I think Groot is also with Doctor Strange in the A tier, where he's just like this front line that won't necessarily like bully and take over the game, but if you need a more defensive hero that can, you know, have shielding in the form of his walls, and he can block line of sights and cut off things like sniper angles, he's extremely strong as well. Very consistent, very good. Hela in the beta, I remember, was S tier, but they did end up nerfing her. I think she's also going to be in the A tier. She doesn't really have a lot of weaknesses. She's not crazy high mobility and has no real crowd control, and her ultimate is counterable, but I think her damage output is very consistent, and if you have really good aim, she's very strong as well. So I'm going to go ahead and put her there. And Hulk I'm going to put in C tier. I think Hulk is like a really bad version of Venom. He's very clunky and he doesn't really do a lot of damage, but he is extremely tanky. He's more of like a disruptor, and he can help kind of confuse enemy team, and if he can absorb a lot of pressure, then he can be really strong. But for me, as of right now, I'm going to put him in C tier. He might be able to go into the B tier, but to me, he's just an iffy hero. Still not very good yet. Iron Man, I'm going to put in B tier because while he does do an extremely high amount of damage if played very well, he is very slow in the air, kind of like Pharah, and he can be bullied by a lot of characters like Punisher can gun him down, Hela can gun him down, any hit scan really, especially like Black Widow, can destroy him. But he is good if you're fighting a dive team. So he's situational more so than other heroes like Black Panther because he's a bit weaker, doesn't have very good mobility, but he can be strong in the right situation. Jeff. I wonder, I don't know if I should put him in A or S tier. I think Jeff is just extremely consistent. I haven't played him a whole lot, but there's like a Jeff in every game, and his healing output is extremely strong, and his ultimate is pretty damn funny and extremely strong. So I'm going to go ahead and put him in A tier. I think he's like all around a great hero. He has mobility, and if you try to dive him, he can go into his little fishy form and he can swim around, and he's actually very hard to hit. So in my opinion, he's going to be an A tier hero. Very good output, hard to dive. Just an all around good hero. The only real downside to him, in my opinion, is that his damage isn't the greatest like Adam Warlock, and he has a really big hitbox. So if you fight like a Black Widow, whenever I see a Jeff on the enemy team, he is literally a free headshot. Especially, he's probably going to get crapped on by things like Hela or Black Widow, so be careful if you play Jeff. You have to be good in terms of your positioning in that situation. Loki. I think Loki is also an A tier hero. I think C and B tier are kind of the tiers where they're kind of gimmicky and not that consistent, but I think Loki is one of the heroes that is pretty damn consistent. I think he's definitely better than a lot of... You know what? I'm going to move Hulk down to D, Iron Man down to C. Not that these characters are terrible. I don't think C tier is horrible. I just think Hulk is pretty horrible. But I'm going to put Loki in B. He'll be the standard for B. Quite strong, but situational. Not as strong as the A or S tier, obviously. Luna Snow, I think I'm going to put in A tier. Very, very high output of damage. Very small hitbox. Very forgiving. Not very hard to play. And her ultimate is extremely strong. So I think she's definitely going to be an A tier. Very good hero in general. Magic. I'm going to put Magic in B tier. Now, you won't really run into a lot of really good Magic players, but I do think a good Magic player can be in the A tier to A plus tier, but I think on average, the Magics you're going to fight aren't going to be that good. And the reason for that is she takes pretty good decision making to play well, in that she can be very elusive and very hard to kill, but if she's very unforgiving, so if you mess up, you can die. So kind of like Loki, has potential, but you have to play it well. Magneto, I'm going to put in C tier. Pretty strong, good front line, good cooldowns, but he just doesn't have a lot of output. Definitely in front of Iron Man. He might deserve B tier. Maybe bottom of B tier is more accurate. But in my opinion, I feel like Doctor Strange just feels better to have. He's more consistent with his shield and is a better frontline, and Magneto doesn't do enough damage, in my opinion, to warrant taking him over Doctor Strange. Mantis, I'm going to put in A tier. Another kind of like Luna Snow, where he's very consistent. I'm going to put Black Panther in front of them. She's very consistent, not the most punishing to play, and her ultimate and all that is extremely good. Just an all-around good hero, in my opinion. Namor, to be fair, I have not seen Namor. I've seen him like twice in my like 10 plus hours of playing, and he wasn't really showing up. So I'm going to put him in D tier. He just doesn't seem that strong, in my opinion. I think he's situational. His turrets aren't that strong. Kind of an iffy hero. But maybe with more people playing him, he might move up. But for right now, I just feel like he's underwhelming. Penny Parker. Penny Parker, to me, is one of those heroes where she's very like S tier in certain situations, but only like A tier, like a decent off tank in other situations. But if you're playing like an anti-dive composition, she can put mines all around her team, and if anybody pushes into them, they take a lot of damage, especially if they're like squishy melee characters like Wolverine or Iron Fist who try to dive in. If she protects her team with mines and webbing and stuff, she can be pretty dang strong. So I'm going to put her at the top of A tier. Not a whole lot of skill expression with her, in my opinion, but overall, I feel like she's just really consistent and pretty good and really good in some situations. We're going to put Punisher in the S tier for the first DPS there. I think as somebody who plays hit scan, I think he's extremely strong. He's like, overall, he just always is good, in my opinion. If you're fighting dive, he pulls out his shotgun and can blast people. If he's fighting a brawl comp, again, pulls out his shotgun, you sandwich him between his tank and his supports, and he's just in there pumping tons and tons of damage. I think the only situations he really falls off are longer range matches where the enemy team is playing back with like Black Widow, because his AR isn't as strong as his shotgun, but he can always get value by bullying the enemy tank with his tank and just be really frustrating to fight. So if you play him correctly and play him in the team comp, like within your team and not kind of split up, he's really good at protecting your backliners. He's really good at pumping the tanks. He's just really good all around, in my opinion. Never a bad time to have him on your team. Rocket. We're going to put Rocket. I'm going to put him in B tier. I think the issue with him is kind of like with Loki. Like, he has a lot of potential and can bring a lot of value, but I feel like his a little bit more difficult. Like, he doesn't do as reliable damage, and his abilities aren't as consistent. It takes a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of team play to get the value out of his revive and things of that nature, especially if you want to revive the right person. But not that he's a bad hero. I think he's really good. He's just not in the A tier, in my opinion. Scarlet Witch. Now, she's an iffy one. I think in low elo, she might be S tier. Very easy to play, very forgiving. But the higher and higher you go, she loses value. So because of that, I'm gonna put her like in the B tier, maybe the top of B tier overall for ranked. I think I never really have too much of an issue with her, especially if you have good aim. But overall, I think she's really strong, depending on what rank you are. Spider-Man. We're gonna put Spider-Man in A tier. I think, is he better than Hela? We'll put him up there. And the reason for that is his damage, he's very cooldown reliant. Don't get me wrong, he's very cooldown reliant, just like every other melee, but for him, I think especially. But when he does have cooldowns, he can basically come out of nowhere, especially on certain maps. Depending on the map, he's like S tier. Other maps, he might be B tier. So that's why I'm putting him in A tier, because like he's very, very map dependent. But if you get the right map, the right situation, he's damn good. So because he's map dependent, I'm going to put him behind Hela. But overall, I think he's just strong all around. I'm actually going to put these melee at the bottom of A tier, just because I feel like supports are just easier to play and always are consistent. Star-Lord, we're going to put him in C tier, probably in front of Iron Man. A good Star-Lord can do a lot of damage, but he's very unforgiving. And I feel like other heroes do comparable damage for a lot easier. And he's not like Tracer where he can like rewind time, so you can like dive the backline and then teleport out. He's kind of like a slower Tracer without the rewind, but with verticality. So I don't know, he's just not very good right now, not very consistent compared to other characters in the game. Storm, I'm going to put her in C tier. You know, I'm going to put her at the bottom of B tier, right? And the reason for that is she's not one of the DPS who is going to take over the game like other heroes, but the reason I put her ahead of Star-Lord and Iron Man is because she has team utility. And because of that, and the fact she can like speed up her team and whatnot, she's really good. And I guarantee you in brawl comps, like if you run Punisher, Doctor Strange, or Groot, Adam Warlock, kind of these teams that are kind of stagnant, but with very, very high output of damage, if they can get on top of you, she's going to be really good in those comps to push her team into a fight by speeding them up. So yeah, because of that, I'm going to put her in B tier. In ranked, maybe it's too situational, but overall, she's not a bad character. She has utility. Thor. Thor, we're going to put in... He's an interesting here. I'm going to put him in the top of B tier. I think if you... Thor is good, but I haven't seen a lot of good ones. And he's a good frontline, kind of, but he just feels like he's missing something. Like, he doesn't have mobility. His damage is good, but he has to be right on top of you. So to me, he's just, like, strong, but not crazy. Venom. I'm going to put Venom in S tier for the first take. To me, Venom is like if you gave Spider-Man a huge HP pool to play the game, and if you get that huge HP pool low, he just pops a huge shield. So to me, I'm going to put him maybe at the top of S tier. I think he just, when you have a good Venom, he can just take over the game. Like, he can just 1v1 anybody, dive your backline, kill somebody, get low, pop a shield, fly out, get healed to full, and he's fine. As long as you play around your cooldowns properly, to me, Venom is just extremely strong. Like, extremely strong. Probably going to be played a ton in ranked, just because of how powerful and how much, like, solo carry potential he has. Captain America. Captain America is, I feel like, what Thor wishes he could do. I feel like not only is Captain America as tanky as Thor, but he has mobility and pretty good rundown potential. So I don't know if I'm going to put him at the top of A tier. Not as crazy as, to me, as Venom, where he could just kind of run around the game for free, but he's just like in your business, dude. Like, if you have a Captain America who's good, not only can he like have mobility, high damage, and high tankiness, but he's just like cool, good aesthetic. I mean, it's Captain America, all around great hero. Bucky. Bucky. I feel like I'm going to put him in A tier. And if you're fighting like a dive comp, he can be S tier. If you're not fighting a dive comp, I feel like he goes down to the B tier, maybe low A tier, just because he doesn't have very good range. But if you're a really good Bucky player, he's probably like up there in the S tier. But for overall ranked, I'm going to put him in A tier. He's extremely high damage, extremely good into dive because of his toolkit. He can hook anybody who dives your team. And if he hooks anybody in their close range to him, he can absolutely destroy them. Kind of like Punisher, where like if you play with your team properly, he is extremely strong. He might even deserve S tier. I just haven't fought a lot of really good Buckies, but even the average Buckies I have always get good value. So I'm going to put him in A tier, with potential to be in S tier. So I'm going to put him at the top of A tier. We'll put him with Captain America. Moon Knight. I think Moon Knight, man, his damage output has so much potential, and he's not really that hard to play. I think in ranked, like, I would say he could fall down to B tier just because if a team who knows what they're doing knows to kill his little onks, the little symbols on the ground that do AoE damage if he hits him, he won't be as strong. But even if you are aware that he can put those little symbols on the ground, if you're aware of those, I feel like he can still dish out a ton of damage before you have time to react and shoot them. So overall, I just feel like he's a tier hero, just crazy high damage output. And if you're fighting a brawl comp, you can get a lot of value out of his AoE. So if you're a really good Moon Knight, he's really good. Psylocke, I'm gonna put her kind of with Thor, where unlike I feel like with Black Panther or Spider-Man, I feel like she doesn't have as high of mobility as them, and she's very unforgiving, and she requires good aim in order to use her shurikens very well. So I think she's a B tier hero. The fact that I haven't fought any really good ones yet is pretty telling. I think she's just very unforgiving compared to the like Spider-Man or Black Panther. Hawkeye. I'm gonna put Hawkeye, I don't know, high B tier too. I think in front of Psylocke. I think he's kind of like Hanzo. Like, he has one-shot potential, but I feel like it's a bit harder to one-shot compared to Overwatch, in my opinion, just because the maps are a bit bigger, the hitboxes are pretty tiny, and I don't know. He can be good, but he's situational. I think he's like a worse Black Widow, in my opinion. Wolverine. We're going to put Wolverine kind of in B tier as well, where he's kind of a good anti-dive hero, in my opinion. And the reason he can't dive as well, because he doesn't have any method to really get out. Like, if he dives in, he has to be in the fight from then on. He's not like Black Panther, who has like 3 different dashes, or Spider-Man, who can web out. He has to commit. So because of that, he's going to be in B tier. But if you're fighting dive, he's really good. Like, I have a clip, and I'll put it in the background, of me playing Black Widow, and I get dove by a Venom. My brother can just tackle whoever dives into the backline and crowd control them. And that's one thing he has that other melee characters don't. He has crowd control, and he gets stronger the more he attacks. So if you counter dive somebody, or not counter dive, but you counteract the dive that people do on you, get full rage, then you can kind of play with your tank and just be in there chopping people up. So he has a kind of a tempo play to him, where you play more passively, try to stack up rage, attack the tank, counter dive or anti-dive from the enemy team, and then the moment you have 100 rage, then you start to get more proactive, get active in the game, start attacking more, maybe even tell your teammates that you're going to go in because you have full rage. So there's tempo to him. I think he's a little bit inconsistent, but he's really fun, in my opinion, and he can be pretty good in the right situation. Squirrel Girl. Squirrel Girl to me is like a better Junkrat. And the reason for that is she has the same kind of functionality as Junkrat. I'm going to put her in the top of A tier for ranked. Or not top, bottom of A tier. I think, and her trap is unlike Junkrat, is mobile. Like, she can throw her trap and it can hit you. So she has a little bit more command over her crowd control and a little bit more command over how she gets kills, and she can be really annoying to fight, especially depending on the map, kind of like with Junkrat. I'm going to put her at the bottom of A tier. She's really consistent and pretty much always gets value, even if you don't know what you're doing. So I'm going to put her there. Iron Fist. We're going to put Iron Fist in A tier. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, I fought Iron Fist. I feel like this guy can be S tier. And while I do agree with you, in the right situation, Iron Fist can just pummel your team. But the issue with him is that if you have something like enemy team has like a Bucky or a Punisher playing with his team, or maybe even a Squirrel Girl playing with her team, like anything that can just blow him up, he doesn't have the best escapability unless he doesn't use his shift button, which is kind of like a knockup. So it's either a high mobility option or a knockup option, depending on how you want to use it. But I feel like he can get countered pretty hard, more so than other melee heroes, just because he doesn't have as much escapability or big long-range dashes like Black Panther or Spider-Man, but his damage output is actually ridiculous. So I'm going to put him at the bottom of A tier, like A tier with the other melee heroes. He can be extremely strong, but he can be countered. Black Widow, I'm going to put Black Widow in the S tier. And I think the reason that I like Black Widow so much, and I play her a lot, is kind of like with Punisher. She just feels really consistent. And she has mobility where she can sprint around the map and high jump, which is really nice. You can run away from people trying to dive you. And on top of getting dove, you can hit them, like you can knock them back and then stun them. So unlike Widowmaker, who kind of doesn't want to play with the team, sometimes she wants to be on like high ground, just to have a better vantage point. A lot of time you can just play with your team in Black Widow, kind of like Punisher, and just start nailing people. And if they try to dive you, you'll have your supports near you, and you have a knockback and stun, and you have a sprint. So like she's hard to log down if played correctly, and she does incredibly high damage output. So I'm going to put her in S tier, which, don't get me wrong, as somebody who aim trains and loves aiming, I'm very happy with how they designed a lot of the aim heroes. I'm glad it's not like Overwatch where, outside of like Widowmaker, who's really annoying, I feel like the hit scan heroes kind of fall in and out of the meta constantly just because of how unforgiving they are, and their damage output is not that good for even for people who have good aim. So I don't know, to me, I'm really happy. Punisher and Black Widow I think are S tier, and that comes from somebody who plays hit scan, and I still think they're probably stronger than the majority of the cast just because of how good they are always. I feel like there's never a time I can I think the only time I can't play Black Widow is if I'm playing with random people and they don't heal me. But that kind of goes with every character, right? Like if you're playing Adam Warlock and your team isn't healing you or supporting you, you're gonna flop over too. But if you have support, I feel like Adam Warlock and Black Widow are just crazy output of damage. Cloak and Dagger, I almost want to put her in S tier, just because I feel like she's forgiving to play. She has movement and kind of like a Moirasuk and a Suzu kind of, and she does pretty damn good healing. So all around, she's very forgiving and consistent. I don't know, I see her a lot too, Cloak and Dagger. So she's either high A tier or low S tier in my opinion. And let me do a quick overview and see if there's anything I would like to switch. Overall, I think this tier list is pretty good. Bucky could be S tier, but he can also be B tier. It just depends on what comp you're fighting. But kind of like Punisher, if you just play with your front line, you can kind of bully the enemy tank as well. But I don't think he bullies the enemy tank as well as Punisher can. Punisher, just his shotgun does a ridiculous amount of damage, and if you play with your team, you are just constantly just freaking shotgunning people. Your AR does pretty good damage if you go for headshots. His turret is like a mini ultimate. I just think that Punisher is more consistent than Bucky. That's why I put Punisher over him. Yeah, I think this will be my tier list, honestly. I think for ranked especially, this is kind of what I would rank everything. There's not much I would change. So let me know in the comments if you disagree with anything I said. I know some people might think like Iron Fist, dude. Iron Fist is just beating the crap out of me, dude. He just 100 to 0s me in a second. I can't react. I know people might argue for him to be S tier, maybe even Black Panther or Spider-Man, maybe even Hela, Captain America. There's a lot of heroes where you're like, there's potential for them to go into the S tier depending on how you define that rank. But overall, I'm pretty happy with my tier list. So let me know if you agree, if you disagree, and make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff if you enjoyed the video and want to support my channel. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching.